So Laura and I are here today to talk about relational intelligence in healthcare and really to talk about our relationship. So I was diagnosed with breast cancer last year, April 1st, and I got the phone call you kind of don't want to get, and I was devastated. I was in shock. And I had a young child in kindergarten and a family, and I was like, I don't want to die, was really my reaction. So after that, I got really committed to go through this process and get radically supported, was sort of the term I was using, is like, how do I get radically supported through this from my community, and also finding a healthcare team that I felt really connected to, but that were also at the top of their game. And I had taught relational intelligence work to physicians and HR people, and I knew how important it was, but I was the patient now. And it's totally a different ballpark being the patient. I think they say the root word is the one who suffers. So I met Laura after 5 phone calls to your office. I think on the 5th one they let me get an appointment. and what I found was I was bracing for this sterile, rigid, prescriptive, kind of distant medical experience, and what I found was like the exact opposite. There was humor and care and compassion, both from you and also from your team. So, Laura, I won't talk too much about your bio because I've already done it, but I want to say one of her claims to fame is she sings to her patients before they go under, and she takes requests. So, I'm going to show you a snippet of my surgery and the song that was sung to me. It was a song, Bob Marley, Don't Worry About a Thing. You don't see me because I'm actually laying down, but she's standing up and holding my hand. And the night before my surgery, you texted me, I've got a backup harmony singer. And I was excited, I was thrilled. So you'll see the backup harmony singer there too, and then we're going to launch into the interview. So if you could roll that.
Woke up this morning, smiled at the rising sun. Three little birds around on my doorstep, singing sweet songs, our melodies flowing true. This is my message to you. Don't worry about a thing.
I have to tell you, there was when I was interviewing residents for general surgery training at UCSF, this woman, they had me interview her. She was a professional musician. She was a trombone player and had worked for 5 years as a professional musician. And I was just waiting for her to rotate on my service. And I said, oh, great, we've got a list of songs we have to sing. She goes, well, I don't sing. I said, yes, you do. She goes, no, really, I haven't. I said, if you can carry a tune and work in a trombone quintet, for sure, you can sing. And it turned out she had never done it before, and she's great at it, and is doing a lot of it now. But anyway, I was just waiting for that.
So how did you start singing to your patients?
Well, it's actually a very interesting story. Right after I had started on the faculty at UCSF, I had an older woman who had a complication, and I was waiting for and that we had to take back to the operating room, and I was waiting. It was a Saturday, and we were waiting for the anesthesiologist to come back in the room, and it turned out that he didn't realize there was another case, and I was completely stressed about this, and she was stressed, and her blood pressure was on the monitor, and I was just watching it kind of go up, and I'm sure mine was too. And then I had just seen Phantom of the Opera the night before, and I said, do you like music? Singing is my hobby, it's my avocation. And I started singing the music, and her blood pressure dropped 40 points. And I'm sure mine did too. And she told me the next week, she said, wow, that was the most wonderful thing that you sang to me, and that you cared enough about me and relieved my anxiety. And I thought, oh, what a wonderful thing. I can take something that I love to do that actually makes people feel good about it. I think there's another thing that happens. People, the operating room is like a home for me. It's part of my office. It's a very familiar surrounding. Everybody knows each other. There's a lot of chit chat that goes on in the OR. If you're a patient and you come in there, it's this very strange looking place. It's scary. And the people we operate on are people who have cancer, and they're worried about, surviving and all these terrible things. So to come into this place where you get all this chit chat and no one's focusing on you, by having everyone know that someone's picking a song, you hold their hand, they're looking at you as a connection. They don't look at all the creepy things on the walls and the ceiling from their point of view. And so I would tell people, sit down and lie down on the table and see what it feels like. It's anxiety provoking, but it quiets everybody down, and everybody focuses on that person for that moment, and they feel held and cared for. And that's actually the essence of medicine.
And I want to say that's just one way that I felt held and cared for. But there are so many other ways it feels like that you're supporting the culture at UCSF. You said something about, like, we have to take care of each other so we can take care of you. And I'm wondering if you can speak to how you're caring for each other to deliver such high-level care.
So, you can't always alter the biology of the disease that you're taking care of, but people aren't the disease, they're the people themselves. You can always alter the way they experience that and how they go through it and the resilience they have. And so you have to create a culture where everyone has something to contribute. The entire team is part of the experience of taking care of someone. It's not, our care isn't great because of me. Our care is great because the entire team is focused on trying to make that experience better. When I first came up to UCSF, I think that the time in the early 90s, there was this dichotomy between, well, you're either, a high-touch practice and you're really not paying attention to the science, or you're really about the science and you are an expert in trials, but you really wouldn't want to be cared for by these people. And to me, that's a total false dichotomy. That if the idea of personalized medicine is personalizing to biology, patient preference, and clinical performance. And we have to work hard to do a better job of understanding all of those things. But by putting all that together, that's the art of medicine.
Right.
And so, in biology, if someone's got a bad disease, you want to do everything you can to figure out how to get them that right outcome, and to do it as quickly as you can with early indicators and not wait for them to recur where you can't do anything about it. But if they actually have a much more indolent or slow-growing cancer, you want to make sure that you don't frighten them or over-treat them or have the treatment be worse than the disease. That's tailoring to biology. And then you have to meet people where they are, right? And so you have to, so people have to, any two people that may look the same, they might be both 51 years old, they might have a 1.5 centimeter tumor, but that could be where everything else ends. The biology could be different. Their experience could be different. They come different life experiences, different social situations, different preferences. And the treatment that feels right for one person may be completely wrong for the other person, and that's what choice is about.
But that's also the conversation that I feel like you had with me that was different from the other experiences I've had, which were maybe more cold and sterile, was like, what do I want? You would ask me.
Well, what's important? What's the most important thing to you?
Yeah.
So,
and you really listened. Like, you really listened to me and would ask me again, well, why is that important? Well, how about, what if it went down this way? So I feel like you took, as a relational intelligence skill, you really got my perspective. as
Well-
part of the equation. And I felt like, what you're calling patient-driven treatment, like my voice was in the treatment.
Absolutely, and we really want it to be. We've actually done this in a much more systematic way. So we have created. So I work with Jeff Belcora, who is a PhD in decision sciences and actually is management science and engineering. But he created this consultation planning and this whole program of decision services. So he likes to say, how do you prepare people to participate in one of the most important meetings of their life? So what you want is an engaged patient, because it turns out there's, if all of our treatments were 100% effective and they had no toxicity, it wouldn't be that hard. But let's face it, a lot of what we do doesn't work that well, and a lot of it causes harm. So we have to be honest about it and trying to understand what makes sense for where, and there are choices. And those choices come with different outcomes. And the right choice depends on what outcomes matter to you. So what we do is we actually have people, with new appointments, we try and we can get about 70% of our patients. But there's a systematic way of going about helping them prepare questions for their consultation and figuring out what their situation, their choices, who's helping them make decisions. And it's all summarized into a sheet of paper that takes me a minute to read. I walk in there and I have all of a sudden a better understanding of where that person is and what's important. They may not care so much about what happens to them, but they may have like a child with special needs at home and that they can't be away and what they're worrying about. And you have to address that so they can really think about a choice that might make a difference for the next 10 years for them. That's part of the art of medicine. And, and we also have people who come in and record the conversations. And instead of having a physician scribe, it's a patient scribe. One of the important things you ask, how do I create this culture? Well, we have an internship program for kids that graduate from college. They spend a year or two working with us. And one day a week, they serve as these consultation planners. Because before they go to medical school, they are now learning to listen. And what becomes part of their culture is they're an advocate for the patient. They're not an advocate for their specialty.
And they're taking the patient's narrative as part of what you're taking to then determine sort of where do we go with treatment.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a context, and I think that there's, for me, one of the most important things I'm creating this what I call a collaboratory for accelerated learning in medicine, partly trying to make sure that we learn more quickly, and that we think about early endpoints to make better decisions, but also to be thinking about healthcare value and think about, healthcare has become just a huge issue. It's a huge issue in terms of cost to businesses, cost to the people who are on the other side of it. It's still the highest cause of personal bankruptcy. I mean, I had a woman in my clinic the other day who was trying to decide whether she should go get this biopsy that she had put $3,000 down for out of $6,000 that she was going to have to pay. She had this cluster of calcifications that honestly were not very risky at all. If anything, they would be a precancerous thing that we don't need to know about for the next 5 years. If they change, there's no reason to rush in and do this. But the radiologists say, well, anything that's got even as much as a 2% risk, they recommend a biopsy. They don't have a conversation. For this woman, this would have been a quarter of her income for the year. And her OBGYN had called her up and said, just do it for your children. The chance that this would have had any meaningful impact to her was like almost zero. So why should she do that? And when I told our radiologist, she goes, oh, well, then in that case, I'd have her come back in 6 months. She goes, oh, it makes me sad that she's in that position. I said, but she is. You have to think of the impact of what you're recommending, and you don't understand their context. Not everyone has $6,000 to throw away. And we no longer can we say it's okay not to know those things.
Yeah, I love that. No longer can we say, yeah. So one thing that drew me to you, and one thing you're known for, is challenging the status quo.
Yes,
And
like that.
just like that. That's part of her, what she does, both in research, right? But also like in how you're interacting with the patients. You're really doing something different. And I just wonder how that, as a woman and as a leader in the healthcare field, like how is it for you to be that person?
Well, I'm not always loved for my views, but that's okay, because it comes from the right place. I know it's the right thing to do. Change is hard. I'm trying to change the way we run clinical trials. I'm trying to make things more patient-centered. I actually believe at the end of the day, and I know this, I'm someone who's very much about connection. And when the residents come through and I see what really makes people excited, when you can make a connection with someone and you have done something that's changed their life, either because you give them a better outcome or you've listened to them or because you've really made a difference in how they've experienced something that's very scary, it gives something back to you. And one of the things I see physician burnout, and I see that people get tied up doing a lot of things that, some of the systems we have in medicine now are mind-numbingly difficult to deal with because there's so much of, we spend half of our time in documenting. And I really want to change the way we do that. I think that if you can, and we're working with companies like Salesforce to change the way that the patient should enter their data, we should enter the things that are important to us, and we should be able to take our time to have that relationship. And I think that then we want to be able to have outcomes be a routine part of practice so that we can constantly say, wow, I want to unleash the imagination and the power that so many of these smart people going into medicine have and say, wow, I can be empowered to think of a better solution.
But I love that you're talking about how to use technology in order to support humanity.
Correct.
Right.
That's because if you have all those things at your fingertip, if I know what the choices are, I know what the outcomes are, and I know what's important to you, that's where the humanity starts. That's the art of medicine. And I believe that is what makes people happy. I believe that is the kind of medicine that people go into medicine to be that kind of person and to unleash that creativity. We as clinicians can step up and take our profession back and say, look, we can solve the problem, but we have to be empowered to do so.
Yeah.
And then we can become the doctor we always dreamed of being when we went into it in the first place.
Thank you. So we could go on about this for a long time. Before we even came out here, I think we had already come up with something for next year's wisdom. Okay. We decided just through the passion of this conversation. So, I want to say that, part of what we're talking about today is ways to apply relational intelligence in healthcare. But I also think that there's ways to apply these in other areas, right, in our lives and in our businesses, that it's just not healthcare that's needing this. So to close, I also want to give you all, if you're interested in developing more relational intelligence skills, I think they've even cut me off. They're like, you've talked too much. Well, I'll just tell you what it is.
They're up there.
Oh. So if you're wanting to develop some more skills, you can text this number and put in the code wisdom20. And the second skill is really a fun one to do at this conference, to practice at this conference. They're just tips of ways to practice relational intelligence that I wanted to give you all.
And I have to say, one irony is that I run a trial called the Wisdom Study, Women Informed to Screen Depending on Measures of Risk. We're really trying to take, all the controversy around screening and test a personalized approach to screening versus annual screening. And I just think it's ironic that it's called Wisdom 2.0. But any woman 40 and above can go to wisdomstudy.org and sign up and share your wisdom.
There you go.
And help us solve the problems.
Much.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Thanks.